Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Stacey Storino, and welcome to the Mama Saga. This is the channel where I'm a Marvel-loving mama by day and by night, or sometimes early in the morning after watching a new Disney Plus drop. I break down things like traditional Marvel comic books, Marvel movies, or the MCU, and of course, Disney Plus series, including but not limited to the one that I'm going to cover today, which is my first reactions to Miss Marvel episode 5. I can't believe we only have like one more episode and this whole series is over. That's ridiculous. The time has just flown. And we already know that for sure Miss Marvel is coming back in the Marvels, which they are shooting now. That movie was supposed to come out before Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, but you may not know this. They've switched places with the movies. So we're going to see Ant-Man a couple of months sooner than the Marvels. But I have given my theories before about why they've flipped. My channel isn't brand new. We have a bunch of content, and I'm starting to break things out into playlists. So I have pinned down in the comments section, both for the live and for the replay. I have pinned the playlist link for everything Miss Marvel. I'm starting to do playlists for Thor and Black Panther and all of those. But I've said it before in one of my videos, and I'm going to do an updated version of it where I've said I know she's going to show up and figure or factor in somehow to Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Not going to get into that here. I already have a video that's in the playlist that I'll pin first comment, both live stream and the replay, but I'm also going to do the updated video. So this is my Miss Marvel episode 5 reaction. All the replays are here, and we put out content every weekday for sure. And I think I'm going to start doing live streams also, whether something is dropping on Disney Plus or not. I think I'm going to do that on the weekends too. We'll see. So this episode is called Time and Again. So we know that in this episode, the bangle reveals to Kamala the secrets behind her family lineage, and really the truth behind the veil that Waleed spoke about when she visited the Red Daggers towards the end of, towards the midst of episode 4. By the way, I guess I should say this, spoilers. This is, let me just post it in the comments down below as a matter of CYA. Spoilers. You should have watched all 5 episodes of Miss Marvel before watching this live stream or replay. Yep. And spoilers, definitely spoilers. In my pre-edited videos, my video editor Barney and I came up with like a spoiler alert kind of B-roll just to warn you. We're trying to be pretty good about it, but I'm on a live. So obviously you would think that a video entitled like reactions and theories and stuff like that should warn you not to watch a video or a live stream or a replay if you haven't seen everything you need to see up until now. So I like how this episode opens up. It's so clever. I love how they play with like the Marvel logo B-roll for a lot of these Disney Plus series. Sometimes they go a little extra on them, and they definitely did here. It's my first blush reaction, so I'm not, hey, what's going on? Good to see you. Hi, Romy. Good to have you here. Did you watch the episode? What do you think? Let me know your thoughts down below. And if you or anybody else in the live stream or the replay want me to do a Marvel-based video, let me know in the comments section. Really, of any of my videos, the more recent ones, I'm definitely likely to see the comments. And I will not only do your video, I will give you a shout out and give you credit for having given me that video idea. So I really appreciate that. So don't forget that, guys. So this is very collaborative. It's not all what I think. It's what you guys think too. And Rami says, I loved it. I just finished watching the video. Oh, me too. I'm really going to hate, honestly, for this series to be over. I love the character development that they've done. I do think they're spending a lot of time on Kamala and her family because she's going to be huge in the MCU moving forward. And I do think they're going to fold her into the Avengers. I don't know if they're doing the Young Avengers, the New Avengers. I don't think she's going to be on the Thunderbolts team. I do think she's going to be on the Avengers team proper, and she's going to be very, very important. In some of the videos that I've done before, I have referenced the fact that I think she's going to show up in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. She's going to be important there. She's going to face off with Kang initially, and then she's going to definitely be figuring and factoring into more of the cosmic side of things when the Marvels comes out. And I do think they did flip the movies in terms of the order of release, because they were rewriting some things. And I think part of it's going to be because they're having her factor into Ant-Man and the Wasp. She does, in the comic book saga, like the more classic Marvel comic book saga, she does face off with Kang. So I love how the B-roll trailer comes out with Marvel. It starts out the traditional kind with the traditional, like, stuff playing in the individual letters of Marvel, but it turns black and white, which I like, because we are going kind of back in the past. And again, the episode's called Time and Again, right? So I love how also it starts to bounce. Like, you have to kind of be older maybe to remember the old-fashioned reel-to-reel ways that you would see any movies or any like video media, really. And sometimes they would bounce because the actual physical reels would be misbehaving. And it continues to bounce like an old piece of film that's about to snap or break inside the metal casing of the reel. And then the image, the Marvel B-roll, transforms into an actual piece of old school film. And we're treated to this fuller history lesson surrounding the British withdrawal, the subsequent partition event that followed. It stresses that Pakistan has been demarcated as a land for the Muslims to go to, and India itself will otherwise be a free nation. But now, because of that separation and folks trying to flee one section to go to another based upon their religious beliefs, right? And there's all sorts of these clashes and unrest that starts to spark off. And this gets examined a bit more as this episode unfolds. I like how we flash over to Mahatma Gandhi during that old-timey kind of history piece, and then we're asked to go back to British occupied India in 1942 to see not just the genesis of all the strife and struggle, but obviously this was where we flashed back to in the beginning of, what was it, episode 4, and that's when we first saw the clandestines and Aisha and all them. So now in episode 5, we see Aisha running away, because remember, they split up because the British forces were coming to that 10 Rings temple that was there. And I have a whole video about the 10 Rings Easter egg and what it means. And in some ways, I agree with some of the other Marvel theorists out there, but I go into a different kind of slant to it. And I'm going to still defend that. I haven't seen anything so far that tells me that I'm wrong with that 10 Rings temple theory. So if you didn't see that video, make sure you check that out. But we do see now that Aisha's running away in the separate direction that she went from the other clandestines. She's running through a field. She's being chased by a white man with a gun. From the uniform, very quickly looking at it, it does look like he's from the British forces. She throws a dagger and kills him. And guess what? That's actually a callback towards the end of episode, what was it, 2? Where Kamala visits the Illuminatis at the big carnival, and she's asking them about her great-grandmother Aisha, because they know everything, these Illuminatis, right? And it turns out apparently they do. It's a callback to one of the many stories about Aisha that existed, and one of them was she killed a man. Well, she killed a man in self-defense, right? So then one of the opening Marvel B-roll pieces, I should say, prominently features the Red Dagger. Because of course he does come back in this episode. He does factor in very kind of heavily in the comic book saga. But also I wonder how much that ties in with the dagger that Aisha just threw. So then we go to another scene where there's this handsome young man. He's handing out pamphlets to people at the marketplace. He's indicating that Muslims want to have a separate land to themselves so that they can be free. Remember, this is 1940, what was it, 2? It's not 1947. Everything wasn't kind of like tied up, right? Everything's just starting to come and clash. So he says that they're peacefully making the argument for it, kind of a callback to Mahatma Gandhi, who was talking about peace through strength. But he does indicate that everyone's willing to fight so that they can be free and be free to have their religious beliefs. Of course, we all should be free to have whatever religious beliefs we want to have, or to not have religious beliefs as we wish. He says that he warns, don't consider our peaceful attitude as us being weak. Mahatma Gandhi, so we were already calling back to the image that we saw in the reel. Mahatma Gandhi has said that the time has come for us to do something. If we have to fight, we will fight. So at this point, Aisha's there. She's dressed more in plain clothes. She's kind of changed her garb from when she was with the clandestines. And I think even back from when she killed the dude to get away safely. You can tell she's attracted to the man that's in the square, and he's handing out flyers and passionately making his cause. He says, this land is ours. We have given our blood to this land for thousands of years. We'll take it back. So everyone in the village square is actually applauding. He's not meeting with all of this criticism. However, the British soldiers do kind of swarm in and to break everybody up. And Aisha's just watching all of this. I thought for sure she might get involved in it because of all the other stories the Illuminati's told, but she doesn't. She just watches. The soldiers push the gentleman who was speaking away. And then that's when you see the camera showing that he's walking with the stick. So you're like, oh, that's got to be Kamala's grandfather, or great-grandfather, I should say. So you can see Aisha looking him up and down. She's checking him out. She's clearly attracted to him as he's being pushed away. But she nevertheless goes her own way. Again, I went for the head fake. I thought she was going to try and help him or whatever, but she doesn't. So she goes off on her own, and later on she's lying down and she's sleeping out in the fields somewhere, and she's being poked with a stick. So she grabs the stick and she threatens that she's going to break the guy's leg, but it turns out it's the same guy that she saw in the square. So he just is like, you want to break my leg? It's already broken. And then he asks her if there's anything he can do for her, since it's obvious she's on her own. She's sleeping out in the wild. And he mentions, and this becomes important in a minute, he mentions that he doesn't want Aisha trampling his roses. And I think this is important. Like, no loose end ever means like nothing in the MCU. It's all kind of like, and I've mentioned this before in some of my pre-edited videos, it's like Chekhov's gun. That's like a screenplay. It's a screenplay theory where you don't have something show up or be said or depicted or shown in an episode, and then it doesn't mean anything. The human subconscious mind, if not the conscious mind, doesn't like open loops that don't mean anything. So Chekhov's gun is like, if you show a gun in a play, it's got to be used before the end of the play. So you may or may not remember when Kamala first came to the Karachi airport, she was just randomly hit with a spray of roses. And I didn't see any connection between that and her cousins, certainly not her Nani. Her Nani hadn't come on the scene yet when the cousins were there. The cousins put strands of red flowers around her. And again, as I spoke about in last week's episode breakdown, that was definitely a callback to the title, if nothing else, Seeing Red, right? So this time it's time and again, and we're back in time. But the whole concept about the roses and Hassan ends up being the guy's name. Hassan's field. He's a rose farmer. He sells the roses for a living. You know, he's got a nice home. So he must be doing well. Let's see. Romney says, good observation. That makes sense. Thank you. Yep. So I thought it was odd that Kamala was just randomly sprayed with the roses. And I'm like, if that's not being thrown by anybody specifically coming to get her, I wonder what loop they're opening that they're closing later. And roses are a big part of, you know, Hassan's business, his life. And actually, when you think about the painting that Nani or Sana had painted of Aisha from her memories of her, she had a rose in her hair, which meant she often had a rose in her hair. And if I was married to a rose farmer, I probably would too, right? So then Aisha's like, no, she doesn't want any help. But eventually, she ends up coming into his home anyway, and he's offering her food, and she doesn't want to eat. She doesn't want to talk, and she's acting really weird. And he did kind of make a joke. Now I know that you're putting on a show. No human life can resist this food. And he basically says to her throughout a bit of this episode that she's magic, and she never says anything one way or another about it. She kind of plays it off. And you could see she's got the bangle on that she took from the temple of the Ten Rings temple. So, she starts eating. She just keeps eating, and she's not really talking to him. And he's like, you're clearly not British, he deduces, and you're not from this village. So, he asked what brought her there. And all she says is, I like your roses. Doesn't say what brought her there. And he's like, she speaks. You're very kind. Which kind of rose is your favorite? He's trying to talk to her, and he's chattering away. And you can tell he's all creative and he's all passionate. And who does that make you think of? That makes you think of his daughter, Sana, who, of course, is Kamala's Nani. And you could see he's like this artistic, creative, free spirit. He's this entrepreneur raising roses and selling them to the people in the town, right? He's all passionate about food and everything. And Aisha then tells him her name. And he says, Aisha, she who lives, a beautiful name. And then he says his name is Hassan. Now, I'm going to tell you right here, I may be wrong, right? We Marvel theorists can be wrong. I want to know what you guys think live or on the replay. Please let me know in the comments down below. But let me know. Aisha, she who lives, I'm wondering if somehow in some form or another she's still alive. Okay, because for them to say that again, this is very much a Chekhov's gun. Why would they give her that name? And or why would they have Hassan make the name, make a big deal about the name, right? He mentions it. This isn't just a little Easter egg that goes in passing. They're actually putting an accent mark on it. I've said before in some of my pre-edited videos that are on this channel that I felt that Aisha was going to end up being alive somehow at the end of the day. Anthony Starr, what's going on? Got your notes up fast, Mama Saga? Yes, I did. That's part of the reason why I can't jump on faster, Anthony. It's because I sit there and I'm freezing it and transcribing things and freezing and transcribing. And I don't pretend that I catch every last Easter egg. I do defend what I said with the roses if you were there when I said that. If not, definitely circle back because I do think that's got Kamala being sprayed with roses at the airport was definitely a callback to here. And the fact that Hassan's making a big deal about what her name means, she who lives, the person who is she who lives isn't going to just die at the end of this episode. And again, I put in the comments down below, spoilers. So, Aisha's died in this episode. But here's another thing, and I've said this before in another edited video of mine, and I will say it again here, and you guys can let me know in the comments down below, live or on the replay. You're welcome here. You can put hashtag live, hashtag replay if you want, just to let me know when you're seeing this. But not only do I think now, by making a big fuss about what her name means, she who lives, I also think that she's got to be the one that's been sending the women in her lineage who still have this bangle the image of Karachi Station. I do think she's the one that's been sending those images. Now, it could just be that she was sending the images because as she lay dying, she saw that her daughter Sana was lost and wasn't with her husband and was like, somehow somebody come help me. We're at the Karachi train station. That could be, but I still think them making such a big deal about what her name means. I don't think she's done yet. Got it. Thank you, says Anthony. Rami says, she who lives reminds me of he who remains, although I don't think there's any intended connection. I was thinking that too. You are really clever. I was thinking that too. I don't think there's an exact connection, but I've said this in a couple of my pre-edited videos. So again, if you guys watching this live or on the replay haven't subscribed, you should. Number one, give this video a big thumbs up. It'll push it out to other people because the algorithm likes that. But also check out the videos that are in the playlist that I have pinned as the first comment live or on the replay. I have definitely given you a bunch of Easter eggs and a bunch of theories about how Kang and Kamala really are going to clash. I do think it's going to take Kamala and Captain Marvel and Quantum or Photon or whatever they're calling her nowadays is Monica Rambeau. I don't think she's officially picked a name yet. But I think you're going to need all three of them with their cosmic powers to go up against Kang. And I give you why with the comic book saga and just what He Who Remains was saying in the final episode of Loki season 1. So many. So I'm thinking that does kind of have a rhythm or cadence that shows you that Kamala, she who lives, or she comes from She Who Lives, is actually going to go up against He Who Remains, or a different form of He Who Remains. So I do love that. Do I think there's a more direct connection than that? I don't think so, but you guys can let me know live or on the replay. So now the next scene flashes, more time has passed. The roses that Hassan was growing had grown higher. Aisha has a rose in her hair, which matches what you saw in Sana's picture or painting from the previous episode. She looks happy, and she gifts Hassan with like a proper walking stick because he's been walking with like a tree limb up until then. And he jokes and says, "And to think when we first met, you threatened to break my leg." And she goes, "Well, I changed my mind." And she goes, "Thank you for making a home for me here," which is kind of like a bit of a stilted way of saying, thanks for giving me a happy home. Giving me making a home for me here really does make her sound like an alien that's out of place. And you can kind of see a quick look on Hassan's face, but again, he doesn't make any big deal about it. The camera pans downward, and you see the bangle in the foreground. She's always wearing the bangle since pretty much the time she's left the Ten Rings Temple. But you also see that she's got a pregnant belly. She's pregnant with Sana, and then Aisha walks off hand in hand with Hassan, which shows you that they are together, they're married, they're making a family. And the very next scene, you see baby Sana in the crib, and Aisha's singing to her, and she's all happy. The bangle, again, is clearly prominent in the scene. They're not playing it down. Hassan watches Aisha, and you just get a sense of like love and reverence and respect for this family. What Aisha had with Hassan was very, very real. And so then the next scene, Sana's definitely older, and she's playing with her mother's bangle. And the radio's playing in the background, and it's like this announcement, and citizens are to remain calm. And there's a newscaster is giving a discussion about putting an end to all the internal strife that's going on in the country that's getting in the way of people otherwise enjoying their freedoms. Both Hassan and Aisha are dressed in what appear to be matching green outfits, which, if you ask me, looks very much like the green cloth vest that Waleed gave to Kamala in episode 4 when she left the Red Dagger's, stronghold as a gift. So they're in outfits that really do match that. Let's see. It's dark. You can't really see too much, but you can see that Hassan's upset. He says peaceful. With all of this bloodshed and violence, they're calling it peaceful. So this is like propaganda, and they definitely want the people to behave. And Aisha's reassuring him, we'll get through this. And then there's a man at the door. His name is Rohan. He ends up dropping off fruits and vegetables for the family, and Aisha's happy to see him and to receive the gift. But Hassan's kind of bitter and tells her to refuse Rohan's charity. And the man's surprised. He scolds Hassan, who's very sour, and says that he's playing right into the hands of the British, meaning the British is trying to split us up, and you're falling for it, and you're getting all bitter, and we're tearing ourselves apart as a people. We shouldn't do that. We should support one another. But Hassan's like, Rohan, that's easy for you to say. Nobody has pushed you out of your home. I am the one who is stuck. No one is willing to buy flowers from me, nor will anyone sell milk to my wife, because I am a Muslim. So obviously, they're in India, and the folks in India are like, get out of here, go to Pakistan. Get out of here. That was annexed for you. You're a Muslim. We don't share your beliefs. So we're not going to, support your entrepreneurial, business. And, that's going to make it hard for you to stick around here. And if we don't sell any food or anything to your family, then you'll starve. So we'll just starve you out. So they're not using like violence against them, but they're still pressuring them to leave that area. So you can understand why Hassan's upset. So Aisha asks Rohan to forgive Hassan. He's clearly upset. And Rohan reassures Aisha, don't worry, everyone's scared. This time too shall pass. The name of the episode is Time and Again. And I know that if you've seen the episode already, you've seen Kamala go back in time and kind of close a bit of a loop that was open with her family. But I think the fact is they don't put in extra stuff just for clutter. I think when Rohan is assuring Aisha that this time too shall pass, the chaos that's about to visit her family, that's going to get smoothed over too. So when Rohan leaves, you can tell that Hassan is broken. Aisha legitimately feels sorry for him. They're no less in love. They're no less of a happy family. They're just stuck in an unhappy situation. And then Aisha sees as Rohan's leaving that there's somebody else out there. So she takes a lamp and goes outside, and it's Najma. And Najma's like, so this is where you've been hiding. And she's pretty crisp, so you could tell she's pissed. They were supposed to split up and find each other. And clearly Aisha's gone and made a life. So obviously, whether it was sooner or later, she stopped looking for the other clandestines. But then you can tell that Najma still loves Aisha. She holds her, and she does seem to be a bit sincere as she's doing it. But the camera goes to Aisha looking over Najma's shoulder, and you can see that she's very conflicted. So Najma goes, I thought you were dead. We searched everywhere for years, right? So it's been about 5 years. San is about 4 or 5 years old. But now that I found you, we can put our plan into action. So, Najma just wants to go home. And in one sense, you can't blame her if you're not in your home and you want to go back, But Aisha is definitely conflicted. It's scrawled all over her face. She doesn't say anything like, yay, let's go. So Najma's like, don't you want to go home? And Aisha does say, of course. Now, I don't know if she's just playing into it to smooth things over with Najma. She's like, of course I do. But I hid the bangle for safekeeping. And it turns out this is the first time since she's left from the 10 Rings temple that it's not on her person, other than watching Sana play with it in another scene in the past, right? So she knew if she had the bangle on her, Najma would just take it or take her with her. So she obviously doesn't have it on her. So she goes, I hid the bangle for safekeeping. Retrieving it will take some time. So Najma's like, whatever, you have until sundown tomorrow, and then we can all go home together. And she's smiling this creepy smile, and Aisha's clearly not into it. But she goes back into the house, and all of a sudden her attitude has changed from something gentle, like, don't worry, Hassan, it's all going to be okay. And Rohan and the kind people from the neighborhood will support us until we figure out what to do. Now she's like, you know what? We're leaving. Riots are spreading. Everyone's trying to leave now while they still can. Let's all go. And she picks up the picture of the family, and she's just like, she puts it on her, and she's like, let's go. And Hassan's like, this is all I've ever known. I've thought of leaving, but like, what will become of myself and my daughter? It's interesting how he says that, and he's not really referring to Aisha. Their daughter's little. You try not to think about it, but you're like, there's a reason why he's saying it that way. Because like, he's infirm, so he's lucky he could be a rose farmer and make a living. His daughter's little. She's not going to survive on her own. He's like, if I don't have my rose farm, what am I going to do? But he's not worried about Aisha, right? He's not worried. But Aisha's insistent. She's like, no one's safe here. They're burning homes across the countryside. People are dying. Let's go. Meanwhile, she was all chill before. But then she goes to comfort him, and she's like, we can take our memories with us. As long as we are together, we can belong anywhere, Hassan. Now, I think that that's so interesting that she says that. I mean, obviously, she may be thinking more two-dimensional in this scene where she's like, obviously, we can belong anywhere, Hassan, our family. Let's get on the train and go to Pakistan and be safe there. But given what we start to see towards the end of this episode, I don't think what happened with the veil and the clandestines' physical forms, I do not think that that's where things end. I think we see the veil revealed in real life and not just in the model that Waleed showed Kamala, in episode 4. In episode 5, we see the veil in action and how destructive it is. But, these jinn, they're different beings than the human beings that are on this planet. And if you know anything about the jinn in the more traditional Marvel comics, they take on a whole bunch of different forms. And they could look humanoid, but sometimes they look very twisted, different humanoid too. And I'm thinking that whatever originally brought the jinn to the planet, I know they were exiled. So when they were sent to the planet, that doesn't mean that the forms they were in were the forms that they look like. They might have transformed so that they could blend in with their new environment more. They are magical creatures. They are jinn. This is not the Inhumans version of what happened with Kamala Khan and her family in the comics. The MCU does take a lot of creative license. But she does make a point of saying we can belong anywhere. So I'm wondering what she thought she could pull off, that she might still pull off. I do think that someone specifically was sending those images of the train station to the family through the bangle. Then she specifically says, what you seek is seeking you. Now, that's what was inscribed on the bangle. That's what Waleed translated for Kamala off the bangle. And he didn't say, and this is an important demarcation too, everything he ever studied of that bangle, anything that any of the Red Daggers knew, that inscription wasn't on the bangle. So while you don't specifically see it in this episode, you do realize that at some point when Aisha took it and ran off with it to the time where it makes its way off with Sana to her father, Aisha must have put that on there. And it's interesting because immediately after she says, what you seek is seeking you, she says to Hassan, you taught me that, meaning Hassan. Now, Rami says, I didn't get why the clandestines were killed by the Noor. And yes, they probably look like the beings in the other world Kamala passes through in the first episode. Yes, and if you saw my past edited videos, we do live streams and replays and edited videos for anyone new to me live or on the replay. Make sure you subscribe, give this video a big thumbs up. Anything helps to send signals to the algorithm to push this out to even more people, because I like doing lives and I like getting video ideas from you guys. I do. But this, I have to say, well, you had some major Marvel theorists thinking that it was the Kree. Remember in episode 1 when Kamala first put the bracelet on and it swung her around into like that purple dimension and then swung her back out? I'm like, purple means magic or witchcraft in the MCU. It also corresponds to what? The Power Stone. That was one of the 6 singularities, the 6 main elements of all the material of the universe. So when you saw Agatha Harkness using magic in WandaVision, that was purple. When Wanda used her powers, they were red because those are, part of the chaos magic. And those are more directly related to Chthon, who is a very, very old entity. Anthony says exactly, Aisha must have a special connection to the bangle. I totally agree. And I do think that Noor veil, in my theory, you guys tell me what you think right now. I think that when the clandestines touched the Noor veil, their physical forms dropped away, but that doesn't mean they didn't go home. That doesn't mean the spirit of them didn't at least re-enter the Noor dimension. I have more reasons why I think this in my notes along the way. But there, the whole thing about what you seek is seeking you is something that Hassan had said to Aisha, that Aisha inscripted on the bangle. My guess is she probably did it really quickly as she sent Sana off with it at the Karachi train station. And then, of course, Kamala this whole time has been seeking, who she is, how she fits in, all tying back into that first Disney song that her goofball counselor had said to her, go look in the mirror. And, it's the song Reflections from Mulan. And if you look at every single word in that song, it really does talk about like the character arc that Kamala is on, especially in Miss Marvel. She's seeking who she really is. She's seeking a life that makes best sense to her. Everybody's thinking about as they're 16, 17 years old, going off to college or what their post high school life's going to look like. And she's just stuck in fantasy land and focused and fixated on superheroes and their powers and their positive impact on the world. That's what she wants, but she didn't know how she could cross over into that world. What she's seeking ended up seeking her through the bangle that her grandmother sent to her, knowing that it had power in it. Sana actually knew a bit more, if you ask me, than she let on. And I'm going to explain why I think that in a minute. So Sana starts crying, and Aisha's like, I know, Bitta, new adventures can be scary, but she gives her the bangle specifically and says, that's why I want you to hold on to this for me. This will keep you safe wherever you go, okay? And like Sana's like, yeah. So they join all the people who are on the long trek to the train station, right? We're not driving in cars here. They're all walking. And you can see that they start during the daytime. By the time they're approaching the train station, it's night. And Hassan is obviously having a hard time keeping up with everybody. He's going with the stick, but his leg has been broken for a very long time. He's lame. He's in pain. And he says, Aisha, please, I can't keep up. But Aisha's like, no, this is the last train. We have to get out of here, because obviously she wants to put some distance between herself and the clandestines. I don't know what she thought she was going to do. I mean, she's one of them. She knows that eventually they're going to find her. And if the red daggers can track the Noir, like they discussed in episode 4, how could the clandestines not track their own people with their own energy signature? But I guess she was just trying to buy herself more time with her family, or at least get them off to safety or whatever. So Aisha turns around, Sana's in her arms, Hassan sits down, and he's like, tell me the truth. And she's like, I need to show you something. So she takes out the bangle, and again, it opens up and powers up briefly, but then it shuts back down again, like it did the first time when she put it on at the 10 Rings Temple. So, and he's like, but why are you telling me now? And I'm thinking that she probably thought she was just going to send them off and maybe sacrifice herself or whatever. So she just basically says to him, you chose us. That's what mattered. And she's like, I'm still choosing. Oh, he said to her, you chose us. I don't care that you're really magical. Nothing else matters. I love you. You're my wife. And she's like, I'm still choosing you. Whatever happens, make sure Sana gets on that train. And he's like, nothing's going to happen. But now we're at the train station, and it's all like the crazy stuff that you saw towards the end of episode 4, where Kamala is shoved back in time. Hey, Dino Comic, what's going on? Good morning. Dino Cosmic. I'm sorry. Dino Cosmic. What's going on? Did you see the whole episode? What do you think? What are your theories? This isn't just about me. This is about the people in my community. I want to know live and on the replay what you guys think. And if you agree or disagree with anything that I'm saying, maybe there's an Easter egg I missed. I'm not saying I can out Easter egg everybody on Earth. So at one point, we are not initially shown why. Aisha tries to break away from Hassan and just leave him, and, just tells him to get on the train. And Sana, like any 4 or 5-year-old, starts crying for her mother. Dano Cosmic says, such a lovely emotional experience that was. I agree. They are really making you care about this family, and they are giving you a big, long backstory about Kamala because she's just going to be a huge character going forward in the MCU. That's why they're spending so much time with this character development. Rami says, do you think Aisha wanted to avoid Najma because she had a family? If so, does that mean that Najma is inherently evil, or did Aisha veer off her nature? I love that, and I totally think it's both, because let's think about it. They made it clear in that flashback a couple of episodes ago when we first went back to the Ten Rings Temple. Oh no, before that, I'm sorry. What was it, in episode 2 or 3? Was it in 3 where Najma was explaining where the clandestines came from? She did very briefly mention at some point, she did briefly mention that the whole group of them had been exiled. So I'm thinking that whatever they got exiled for, Aisha was no angel. And Aisha was absolutely no angel. And I don't think she had any intentions of just hanging around. I think she ran away from the one British soldier that was going to kill her. She killed him, continued to run off to put a lot of distance between them. You are right. Number three, episode number 3, this came out, that they were exiled. So I think it's a mixture of both. I think that they were all inherently bad folk, because what the heck would you get exiled for? Because you were heroes and saved people? Probably not, right? Who knows? There could be a misunderstanding and you get exiled for something that, was actually meant to be nice. But, and I'm not being sarcastic, there can be miscommunications. My guess is that these folks weren't that good. And the Jinn were like, get out of our dimension, bye, go. We don't care, you just can't stay here. So it ends up that Aisha's hands were probably very dirty with something, but when she runs off, it's because she fell in love with Hassan, that she ends up just, I don't know, telling herself hope beyond hope. Maybe the others just won't find me. We did go in 2 separate directions. This does appear to be a big world, and she just let herself get lulled into living with, the artist / entrepreneur. He won her over, and that was it, because Sana was pretty old, considering the fact that they were, that they met when she first left the Ten Rings Temple. It was a quick 5 years, right? They must have had that baby, or, got pregnant pretty early on, because Sana was a good 4 or 5 years old at, the actual main partition event, right? So I'm thinking she fell in love and just got swept away by it, and just kind of was hoping beyond hope. Maybe I can just reinvent myself, be a good wife of a rose farmer, and live happily ever after. Maybe they won't find me. Oops, they did. So we can see Najma and the others at the train station. They figured out that Aisha would try to flee. And so they know that these are the last trains out of the area, possibly, period, end of story. So they know that if they're going to catch her, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. We're just going to sit here and we'll find her. And they did. So Najma tells Aisha, you've turned your back on us. You've turned your back on your people. So this is kind of like a callback too to when the Illuminati said towards the end of episode 2 at the carnival, we heard that Aisha had 2 families. She kind of did. The clandestines were probably like family to her. I do think that Najma and she were sisters. Maybe that was a real thing when she said sister instead, at the Ten Rings Temple before they split up, So she did have 2 families. The Illuminatis do know all. It's kind of frightening. Anthony Starr says, Aisha did tell Najma that it's not going to work getting back home. And I completely agree. That's why it was so important to see at the Ten Rings Temple flashback a couple of episodes ago. Aisha put it on, her eyes turned purple, the magic started to activate, and then it slammed shut. I know that Bruno also, when Kamala was wearing the bangle during the training sessions, I think it also in episode 2, Bruno had done a bunch of analyses and had said, you do have powers. They are magnified by the bangle. So I do think there's some sort of connection about her being Earthborn and being able to unlock powers. Now, And I know that Najma said that and kind of was like, oh, that might be why you can really use the powers. And then, of course, they go and crash Amir's wedding because they want Kamala and they want her to activate that bracelet. And I think that what Kamala says towards the end of episode 5 and what Najma does, I think we might end up seeing Kamran flip and become an enemy again. I'll tell you why in a minute. So, of course, Najma, ever the baddie, she asked where the bangle was. Aisha didn't answer, so she stabs her in the stomach. In Star Wars, you get stabbed in the stomach. Everyone lives no matter what happens. Here, apparently, you get stabbed in the stomach and maybe you die. So, and in fact, this is where Anthony Starr very rightly says, Najma, it won't work, but she didn't care. She doesn't care. She goes off. And Sana's just stuck crying for her mother in the middle of all the chaos, right? I'm surprised she didn't get trampled to death, right? Aisha hears her and she holds up a picture of her family and cries. She says again, what you seek is seeking you. And then the bangle activates on Sana and her eyes glow purple. Oh no, the bangle activates on Aisha, her eyes glow purple, and she passes out and the bangle glows white. When the white light disappears, Kamala's red Converse sneakers appear. Now she's back in time. We've closed the loop that was open towards the end of episode 4. And so Kamala is now making her way through the crowd, kind of like we saw towards the end of episode 4. But this time we see more of the scene and she finds Aisha on the ground suffering. If she didn't see Sana's painting, I would imagine, how would she know it was Aisha? But because she did, here's another loop that closes, another Chekhov's gun. She sees the painting of her great-grandmother. She can now match the face to the painting, knows it's Aisha, and then asks what happened to her. But all Aisha's worried about is Sana, obviously, and that she says, oh, the bangle brought Sana to me again. And Kamala's like, no, I'm Kamala. Then Aisha gives Kamala the picture of the family and insists that she doesn't have much time. She's got to go save them. And Kamala's like, no, you were supposed to save Nani. But Aisha reassures her, no, it's okay because you are here. Apparently she dies. I'm thinking these physical forms are just one thing. Kamala is momentarily overwhelmed, but then she makes her way through the crowd. She sees Sana crying out for her mother. She can match her up to the photo. And she finds her and embraces her and picks her up and starts to calm her down. But they're going to get trampled. That crowd is closing in on them and mashing into them. And Hassan's shouting for his daughter using her name, and Kamala finds him because of that. And she realizes, I got to get these two together. So she asks little Sana, if she wants to play a game. And she frees up her hands and sends out a trail of hard light to her. And at first it's like discs. So the kid gets up on the discs. And then Kamala gets like knocked over because it's crazy. The hard light disappears. And so here's the thing. You guys tell me what you think. This is only my first view through. I think because of the bloodline that goes through them, that Sana cast her own bright lights or tiny little stars. It looked like it because her hands were like massaging them, and Kamala didn't create stars. But maybe it's because the hard light disc breaking, and this is the leftovers. But interestingly enough, the trail of stars still lead her to or let Hassan see that she's there. And then he says Aisha, which is really interesting. I guess he connects Aisha to the magical event that's going on. The stars do reach out and connect to Hassan. And I'm like, would you look at that? Did Sana have anything to do with it? Yeah. Dano Cosmic says, thought it was the broken disc pieces that somehow lingered. Yep. May very well be. But I saw how Sana was like her little hands, the camera stayed on her playing with the stars. So Could very well be that she really took in that moment with all the stars, how they led her to her father. So maybe she didn't cast them. And she's young, so young kids are very emotionally flexible, and things like that are cool. Rami says, yes, I thought the same as well, because Sana wore the bangle and she basically has the same genetic makeup as Kamala. Yeah, it could be either way. It really could. But I will tell you that Sana did say to Kamala in episode 4 that the last time the bangle was used, that's what happened. So Sana, for whatever the reason, did not use the bangle again, which I find hard to believe, because Sana was such a crusader on behalf of what her bloodline was, and that they were magic, and that this happened, and they had powers and all these things. She understood the importance of the bangle and sent it to her family, because she didn't want it there with her when she died and to just fall into the wrong hands. It seems weird that someone who's that much of a crusader about how magical her family is never used the bangle herself. So, well, what do I know? Anthony Starr said, kid grabbing flashing lights. Oh, I think it very well could be. But Rami says, so the importance of Kamala's role could have been a self-fulfilling prophecy, where Sana had to survive, but Kamala can come home into being and into her powers. That's true. Because if something happened to Sana, either at all, or she doesn't make it on the train with her father and she has a very different light, Rami makes a very good point. That would have broken the whole chain, and then Kamala never would have been, and quite frankly, Muneeba would have never have been, more likely than not. So, yes, it could be that she came to close that loop. Kind of like a Back to the Future sort of thing, right? You guys, like, you could see that. You could definitely see that kind of story being retold a bit here. Let's see. And then after Hassan does make off with Sana, so again, Rami's right, close the loop. We go back to Kamala finishing her journey to the floor, like she was knocked to the floor when Najma stabbed her bangle. In fact, everybody apparently was blasted to the floor. I only saw Kamala and Red Dagger really fall back in the last episode, but apparently it knocked everybody out. It KO'd everybody. And so they're all starting to get up. They're all starting to come to. But you can see that the event caused a huge energy rift ahead of everybody. As they're all starting to come to, they see it. And Najma identifies it as the veil and says it's open. I don't know how she knows that it's open, but whatever. We immediately cut to the next scene, and that's we're back at Nani's house. The cousins are there. Nani and Muneeba are there. Muneeba's freaking out, as you know she would. And she's trying to call Kamala on the phone, but she's not picking up. So Sana comes over to her, and she's like, oh, me. She won't pick up the phone. This makes me laugh. So Sana goes, well, Magnum, the dog, was lost once. I had him microchipped. And Muneeba's all pissed. She's like, Magnum is a dog. Kamala is a girl. The point is then made by the cousins that Muneeba can find her daughter by using the Find My Phone app to track down Kamala by her phone. Presuming that she still has a phone on her, she can be tracked, much like, the way a microchip could help you track the location of a lost pet. So again, speaking about going back to the concept of Chekhov's gun, when they showed you Magnum in the previous episode, I was like, what are they showing this dog for? Again, like, they don't waste scenes. Every second of screen time costs them money, not only to produce it, but they don't want the episode to go on forever, right? So I'm like, the dog's in here for a reason. And you kind of, I thought, heard a little bit of the Magnum PI jingle in when they were flashing the Miss Marvel B-roll stuff. And I was like, but it can't just be for that reason. And it can't just be because of Bon Jovi and all things 80s. And I'm right. The Chekhov's gun loop closes in this episode because that's how Muneeba and Sana, at least, end up finding Kamala. So now we're back at that energy rift, which apparently is the veil, and it apparently is opening. So one of the clandestine goes to the veil to touch it, and that's where you see they basically turn into a skeleton and then black powder that just falls to the floor like ash. And you're like, nope, that's not going to work. Then Kamala thinks, oh, I'll just throw hard light at it. Nope, that doesn't work. So then she tells Kareem to get the people out, because it turns out there's a lot of townsfolk that are in that area with them all too. So she throws more hard light as a shield. She gets it up as a protective barrier so that the veil hopefully won't harm anybody, as Kareem the Red Dagger gets everybody out, and he gets everyone out. Najma keeps walking towards the veil. Kamala's warning her it's not going to work, okay? Just like her great-grandmother had warned Najma, don't be a hammerhead. It's not going to work. It's not going to work the way you want. It's just going to destroy everything. So she asks Najma if she can to help her close it. But Najma's like, no, I can make it. This is important. But hold on, you guys are important too. Hey, Second Street Marvel, what's up? Hey, you guys, Second Street Marvel is here. Make sure you check out his channel. Very, very nice content. I loved you going on about the tablet, that was shown in the Eternals. Again, like I said a moment ago, and like Second Street Marvel knows, they do not make a big deal in the MCU, even if it's in a Disney Plus series. They do not make a big deal about an artifact without it having a lot of impact and meaning behind what's going on. If it's not a direct plot device, it is kind of a poker's tell about the storytelling intention, which I absolutely love. So if you haven't seen Second Street Marvel's channel, make sure you check it out, and make sure that you check his recent live stream and replay going over the Emerald Tablet. Okay, so Anthony Starr, yes, Jinns can see us. I do think that with Najma saying that she can make it, she understands something that Kamala does not. And this goes back to what I said a couple of minutes ago. So if you're just joining us, make sure you check back to the beginning, because we go through a lot of open loops closing and a lot of callbacks to previous episodes. But she said, I can make it. As we discussed a few minutes ago, these corporal forms that the Jinn have, they're magic. They're made of Noor. They're made of light. I think they're just dropping their physical bodies and going, the physical bodies aren't going to pass through into the Noor dimension, but their souls will. The magical part of them will. So I don't think that they're dead and not going to come back. And yet there's another reason why I say this, and it starts to get us towards the very end of the episode. And this is where the loop opens, where Kamala tries to encourage Najma not to kill herself. She thinks this is certain death. And she says, you have Kamran, right? Kamala's way too nice, because Najma's just awful. Najma says, I don't. I left him behind. So remember at the end, in episode 4, when they get out of the Department of Damage Control, she's like, no. He tried to out us to Kamala, when we were coming to crash the wedding and use her. He's made his choice. He's no longer loyal to us. He has to stay behind. So he's telling Kamala what she doesn't realize, which is another kind of plot device to kind of catch Kamala up. Kamran's not with them anymore. He's not officially aligned with them anymore, physically or mentally. So she says, I left him behind. But she gets this smile on her face, because I think she's starting to come up with a plan. Because again, she knows more than Kamala does, and she knows more than what we do right now. Rami says, if it's true that the clandestines didn't perish, then maybe this was Najma's way of helping Kamran get his powers so he can physically traverse the Noor dimension, which is why she mentioned it to her. I agree 100,000,000%. That's why she gets this knowing smile on her face. Like I just said, you're right. And sits there and goes, I got a plan. And again, I don't think they care about their physical forms. That was something they just took on in order to survive in their new world because they were exiled. So, but she was talking about a couple of episodes ago that, when she recognized that Kamala did have this in her bloodline, and maybe that was unlocking the bangle, maybe it'll help Kamran find his powers too. Now that loop's starting to close, right? So Kamala still doesn't get the picture, and she's like, go back and get him, because she said, oh, I left him behind. Go back and get him. Don't go into the light and die, right? Go back and get him. All Aisha ever wanted was to be with her family, and you took that from her. So she must have seen enough to know that Najma had killed her, when she went into that, back into the past. So please don't take family away from Kamran too. And then Najma says, you're right. There's only one way I can close it, meaning the veil. So she goes up to the veil, lets it touch her and destroy her physical body, but her last word is Kamran. And then the veil shoots off, at least a part of it, to where Kamran, it's somehow been projected at Kamran, and he's walking down, I don't know, some hallway somewhere. It catches up to him, and his eyes glow green. He drops to the floor, and he sees one of his fists start to be covered in this wavering greenish bluish light. Now, if you know the comics, yes, he's an Inhuman in the comics, but this kind of more matches, what physical form he can take on as an Inhuman in the comics. So this is kind of getting you at least some comic book accuracy about how Kamran's powers are going to manifest. Second Street Marvel says, I appreciate the shout out. For some reason, I knew it would be Kamala to save her granny. I kind of thought about that too, because it's very Back to the Future in terms of the storytelling type. It kind of made sense. Kamala so knew about the story. Everyone in her family knew about the story. You probably could have sent any of her relatives back there, and they would have known what was supposed to happen. You could have sent Yusuf, and he'd have been like, hoo, and he would have figured it out, So I was like, that'd be really cool if Kamala did that. I still don't think Aisha's dead. I think her physical form is dead. Just like with the Clandestines, it got they're physically turned to ash, but the spiritual energy that got thrown, that's kind of my guess is, because this is so different than the comic book saga, this is Najma projecting the energy to her son, who, again, we don't know who his dad is, but I'm going to guess he kind of has mixed DNA, part earth, part jinn, part earthling, part jinn. So his powers start to manifest, but meanwhile, we snap back to the scene where Kamala is still at, and the veil closes. So Najma manages to give her team a 2-for-1. She closes the veil, but she also, because I guess, she wants to save her son. Otherwise, what does she care if the Noor totally took over? She doesn't care. She didn't care about Aisha. She sure doesn't care about Aisha's great-granddaughter. No, she's worried about her son, who she did leave behind. So she's going to close the veil, and she's also going to send energy or the Power Stone type magic to her son and get that to activate his magic within his DNA. So as the veil closes, there's a big old poof. Kamala casts a huge energy shield to protect herself and Kareem. And then as that disappears, right behind her is Muneeba and Sana. So they've seen it. And while Kamala hugs her mother, who's very concerned and worried, my poor daughter, Sana just looks on and she's all cool. You know what I mean? She's the cool granny who thinks this is the best. Rami says, now that Kamran has seemingly similar powers to Kamala, but independent from the bangle, would Kamala reach that stage as well, or will she always need the bangle? I love that question. I want people live and on the replay to definitely weigh into this. I think that the bangle is always going to be kind of an accelerator to power. So I don't know that Kamala will need it as much as it's going to be desirable for her to have it on her so that she can do more with her powers. I don't know what they're going to do with Kamran right now. I think he's still a sympathetic protagonist type character all the way through the end of this episode. He definitely is. So I don't know if he's going to flip and become an enemy and give me the bangle, I don't know if he's going to really team up with Kamala, when he's not doing his own thing. Um, I'm not sure. I know that Kamala has bangles on her when it comes to, the comic book saga. So I don't think she's going to shed the bangle. I just don't think it's necessary. I do think that she's, as most teens, she's not done physically maturing. They even say the human brain isn't completely done, like the lobe that deals with risk assessment. And that kind of finer modality of thought isn't completely done developing until you're around your mid-20s. So she's still growing, as is Kamran. They're both, he might be a little older than her, right? He was a senior and she's a junior. But I think as they both grow, their powers are just going to mature and grow with them. But I think the bangle's more of an accelerator. And unless they do something different with it, I argued that it was a negaband. I have a whole episode about why I think so and why I think it's important and why the band or bands, because they usually come in pairs, have the powers that they do and why that's important. Because if you don't have a being with those kind of abilities and powers, not just have like a whole bunch of powers, like, a whole bunch of energy, like Captain Marvel in her binary form. That's where she's the most powerful. She can't maintain it forever, though. She can't. So Kamala having that bangle will allow her to have a lot of the same abilities that Kang does. So, and then lights that are around her, like how it activated her powers with the bangle in episode 1, all those cameras, strobe lights and stuff going on, helped her to really click open the bangle and run her powers. Imagine how powerful she'd be if she were with both Captain Marvel and Monica Rambeau. So I think that the three of them need each other, and she needs to have the bangle on her, I would think. I don't think they're taking it from her, because that's going to be her accelerator, and she's going to draw in all that photon light from Monica Rambeau and all of the cosmic, like, Kree-based energy from Captain Marvel. And I think she's going to blend all that. Bangle's going to accelerate it, and then she's going to totally be what takes Kang down. I do think so. But that's just me. And of course, I love how Muneeba runs up to her, hugs her, and then the biggest thing that she's worried about initially, her knee-jerk thing, is, do your hands hurt? And then, are you okay? And then she's like to Kareem, who's that strange boy? But Red Dagger bows and he greets both of them. And I have to say, I don't know what you guys think, both on the live and on the replay. Did it seem like Nani kind of knew who Kareem was? Because she seemed to not be thrown by him at all. I know that in the comic book saga, it's important because somehow distantly Kareem is related to Nani, which would make him some sort of relative of Kamala's, you would think. And then he becomes an exchange student, and that's how he gets to America. When Kareem Red Dagger leaves, he's like, oh, if you ever, Kamala, if you ever are in trouble, you can give me a call. But, the United States may or may not have several open warrants out for my arrest. So I don't know how they're going to get Red Dagger back over to the US unless he assumes a different identity and manages to fool them and comes in as an exchange student, and he stays with the Khan family that way, because he definitely did it in the books, the comic books, and he was a romantic interest for her that way. Anthony Starr says, by the way, Captain Marvel makes a short appearance in episode 6. How did you know that? You're awesome. That would have been my guess. Okay, like I think last week's live, Mike Porter and I were discussing that we thought that they had to do. I mean, he asked me if I thought it was going to be Captain Marvel, if it was going to be Photon, Monica Rambeau, or was it going to be both of them? And I was like, I think it kind of has to at least be Captain Marvel. They have so many Easter eggs and references and callbacks. And like when at the end of episode 3, at the end of episode 3, the very end, where Nani's like, you have to come to Karachi, to Kamala. You have to come to Karachi. When the phone call gets cut off, I can talk. When the phone call gets cut off, it goes to her home screen, right? Her home screen, of course, is Captain Marvel, but it's Captain Marvel again in her binary form. So that's her most powerful form. And I just think that, again, like what I said, the bangle is going to draw all that binary energy up and be able to allow Kamala to exploit the full use of what's in her DNA with the bangle at that point to really go up against Kang. So the trailer for episode 6 landed. Well, thank you for that. Captain Marvel asks Kamala, do you have something for me? And it might be the bangle. It might be the bangle because think about how it closes that loop. It makes a lot of sense how it closes that loop with the blue arm, the severed blue arm, being what the bangle was found on in the temple, the Ten Rings temple, during the flashback at the beginning of episode 3. And I mean, you did have that post-credit scene in Shang-Chi and the Ten Rings where, yes, okay, Shang-Chi and Katie are being welcomed into the Avengers. They have to reassemble that team. They lost several members who are just, for a variety of reasons, not coming back, right? So they have to reassemble the Avengers. Shang-Chi could be a leader of the Avengers. And then when Wong was asking everybody who was there virtually in their superhero Zoom call there, if they'd ever seen it, it's interesting how Captain Marvel had said that's not like any kind of tech I've ever seen before. That doesn't mean that she just dropped it and stopped investigating it. So she might have figured out that somehow the Kree had a connection to it, which then takes you to the open loop with the blue arm, and the loop's probably going to close towards the end of episode 6 because we have to take her off on the character or the story arc of going off with Captain Marvel. So that does make a lot of sense to me. Rami says, Nani might know Kareem since they both know about the Noor to varying degrees, and Nani didn't seem particularly concerned about Kamala's absence. She did not. She absolutely didn't. But she knew she had the bangle with her, so she knew the bangle was special, right? So, yeah, I agree with that. I totally do. So, of course, Muneeba's like, so you are that light girl? She doesn't even know the name Nightlight, let alone Miss Marvel. Oh, my goodness. So Kamala's like, yeah. And Sana's all super proud. She's like, our family's magical. I've told you so. She's really talking to Muneeba. I've told you so many times through the years. And then Kamala hands her nanny a picture of the entire family. So her nanny had only the one picture with Hassan and Sana in it. This is a picture with all 3 of the family members in it. That was the picture that Aisha held as her physical form died. And, Sana's emotional, but she's not emotional like upset distress, just like, oh, my parents. And Muneeba looks like she's processing an awful lot. So I had thought Muneeba knew about this stuff. I thought she knew. But apparently she didn't. Or did she? Because you had what happened in episode 1 when Bruno came over and the mother's like, let me go get you some leftovers. And like 60 seconds later, she comes back with this like tall bag, of leftovers. A regular human isn't going to be able to do that. And again, it's a Chekhov's gun kind of thing. Why would they show that? Maybe it's just as simple. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Maybe they just showed that because they were like, oh, goofy, you know how moms are. They whip stuff out really fast. But again, this is the MCU, even though it's showing up on Disney Plus, this element of it, it's still feeding into the whole MCU storytelling arc. I don't know. But the mother certainly doesn't seem to know here. She's definitely processing a lot. Nani's just smiling. She's happy. And Muneeba's like, what is this photograph? And those lights, like, how did all this happen? And then Nani's like, I don't know, but I'd like to think the 2 people fell in love and created something much bigger than either of them, which they clearly did. But also Najma and whomever she was knocking boots with did too. So you've got Kamran running around out there. Rami says Muneeba probably didn't know, or at least didn't believe in her mother's stories, which created a rift between them. Yes, it also alludes to Muneeba's grief with Kamala's Fantasyland. Yeah, because you're right. You're really right, because Muneeba left the US. She had told her mother, I didn't leave to escape you. I left to escape all of the negative fallout from you telling everybody these stories that were magical, telling everybody these stories of how you survived partition night and all that stuff. Because, if you really look into the Muslim religion, the religion of Islam, they don't like you worshiping, as with many other religions, to be fair, they don't like you, worshiping magic or fairies or, jinn in this case. The worship and the approval of jinn is forbidden. It's haram. So anybody who's a devout Muslim would probably take offense to the stories that Nani told. And at some point, her husband left, because that's a little detail that Muneeba just kind of flings at us while she's clashing with her mother the last episode. And so Rami's right. She meaning Muneeba, was strict with Kamala, so she didn't end up like Sana. Yeah, but it turns out she still had a rebellious side to her, and her daughter definitely inherited that from Muneeba. Muneeba's trying to overcorrect, like she was super primal scream cleaning, Sana's house, and why do you have all this clutter around here? She's trying to control. She's fighting her inner nature because she comes from, this passionate, romantic crusader of an entrepreneurial father who's selling nature's artwork in the form of roses, and her mother, who, stories of fantasy stuff aside, was very much an artist and a beatnik and kind of living however she wanted to live. So, but what I think is really cool, before they all split up and go their separate ways, well, Red Dagger on his way and everybody else goes home, Muneeba's face as Kamala runs off to say goodbye to Kareem, it's interesting because there's a mixture in Muneeba's face of like wonder, shock, and kind of pride, which I like, because maybe she's going to start embracing the inner rebel, which is more like her mother and her grandfather. Maybe. Maybe she'll kind of relax a little bit. The actress who plays Muneeba Khan already confirmed that she, the father, and the brother were also signed up to reprise their roles in the Marvels. She let that leak. Anthony Starr says it's called shirk, the one sin that God does not forgive, worshiping others besides him. Yep. There is not, when you are dealing with monotheistic religions, they don't like you worshiping anything else other than the one true God. Is it Allah? Is it Yahweh? Is it, God? When you get to polytheistic religions, they're obviously a lot more loose. Let's see. So exactly right, Anthony. I like that. So Kamala gets another piece of her costume, or another nod towards what is comic book accurate for her, when Kareem, the Red Dagger, gives her his red scarf, his red facial covering. Then Muneeba finds a necklace on the floor, and Nani's like, what is this? And Muneeba says, it's Kamala's, it's broken, but it's broken into that slanted S symbol, S-looking symbol that's on the front of the comic book accurate garb from Miss Marvel. So in the next scene, we're at Nani's home, and, Sana is outing Muneeba as having been a teenage rebel when she was around Kamala's age. So this is a rebel payoff from episode 4, when a relative came, they were dining outside, they had it done outside because Kamala was inappropriately dressed in jeans. So they wouldn't let her into the restaurant. And the older relative comes out and acknowledges that, oh, that's no big deal. That's like Muneeba. And in fact, Kamala, that's not even a traditional Pakistani name. And Muneeba was always kind of a rebel. And Muneeba's like, whatever. And you're like, rebel? But now, as we're getting at the end of episode 5, you see the photo album, and, Muneeba was definitely dressing in traditional, like, 80s garb. That definitely wasn't more like traditional Pakistani or like more strict, devout Islamic garb. She's definitely with the big hair and everything in the 80s. So this is definitely the payoff from what was mentioned in episode 4. And Nani and Muneeba are laughing, and Sana says she was quite the rebel. She ran away when she was 17, and she followed that star, Bruce Springfield, which really should have been Bruce Springsteen, but of course Sana's older and it's not from her generation. And Muneeba starts to scold her mother. I started to fall for it. She goes, now, Ami, don't put those lies in my daughter's head. It was Bon Jovi. I liked that. I just really love this family. I love the storytelling. I love them putting all of this backstory in, because again, people who are impatient with phase 4 and all of this table setting that's going on with Loki in the first episode, the first season, here in Miss Marvel, everybody wants to get to like action, everybody fight, but this is a grand scheme of storytelling that is going over an arc that I've never seen before in entertainment history. Because now it's not just over all these movies and you have the Easter eggs and or like the post-credit scenes that are always teasing more, a bigger pattern and a bigger one still. What I love is that now they are shooting off into the Disney Plus series that give them the luxury of doing even more table setting. Like Secret Invasions is going to do a bunch of table setting on, Nick Fury's character. You're going to see him grow up through the years and what influenced him. Yeah, you learn some stuff about him in Captain Marvel, but not really a lot. Because he's going to continue to be a significant character, throughout the next couple of phases, at least. I don't think they're killing Nick Fury off, and I don't think we're going to go into Original Sin anytime soon, if you know that comic book series yourself. Rami says, oh, no, let me get to Anthony first. I try to do you guys in order. I'm trying to respect you. Anthony Starr says, what role do you think Kamala plays in the next Captain Marvel movie? You did mention facing off against Kang. I think exactly so. And actually, this even ties into what Rami says. Yes, Kevin Feige was right when he said he loved the Khans. They gradually got us invested in them. Muneeba and Sana are stars. Oh my God, I love that family. I'm going to miss them after this next episode ties up. I think, Anthony, yes. If you really look at the powers that Kamala had in the comic books, and even when you look at, yes, they did put their own MCU spin on it, but you look at them here and paired with the bands, and if you understand the concept of the bands, yes, they're kind of like a blend of like magic and tech. And I do think the Kree created them. I do think these are nega bands. I'm hanging tough to that. And I do think that that's why Captain Marvel in episode 6, whenever it shows up, even if that's a post-credit scene that gets mixed into the teaser trailer, is like, I think you have something for me. I do think it's important. Just because Captain Marvel's asking for it doesn't mean that Kamala's going to give it to her, or that Captain Marvel ends up, Carol Danvers ends up saying, oh, well, I guess I can't get it. She'll probably be like, then you have to come with me. I'm not going to take it from you, but we need it. We have to figure it out. Do I think that that's like the second half of the set and the other part is the 10 rings from Shang-Chi? I don't know. I know that there are some theorists saying it. I'm not 100% on that. My gut's kind of like saying no to that, just like my gut was saying no when Kamala in episode 1, when the bangle first activated and she got swung through that purple world. Unlike purple means magic. It's not tech. It's not Tesseract stuff. It's not, you know, it's not all those huddled forms were not Kree. I think it was folks from the Nora dimension, but I also think it's interesting how all those huddled, cluttered, chaotic forms, shadowy forms. Remember in episode 4, Nani created a bunch of coal drawings, black and white drawings that almost completely matched the shape and the cluttered up, vision. I think when Kamala grabbed the bracelet, she was swung through the newer dimension, but I also think there's another layer on top of it that might have been people from the partition, and she was kind of almost going back in time then and there. It opened up the loop between herself and Aisha. So, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot more going on there. Hey, Sarita Pradhan, what's going on? This episode defines. Oh, wait. Let me get to Rami first. I wonder if the events of Miss Marvel were a timeline that the TVA would have trimmed. Yeah, probably. If Kang catches wind that Kamala's getting powers that are much like him with the bangle as an accelerator, he's not going to want that. So I think that's really cool. And I agree with Anthony Starr. That is cool. Sarita says, this episode defines Marvel's own theory of time traveling. In Endgame, it was clear that changing the past will create different timelines, and it will never make a loop in timeline half. But in Miss Marvel, Kamala's going back in time to save her nanny is actually a loop. How will Marvel explain this? So that was part 1 and part 2. And then Rami says, but in Loki, the TVA said the events of Endgame were meant to happen. So that could be the accepted sense of time travel. So, okay, I think it all ties in, if you were to ask me. Like when Tony Stark, because he kind of invented time travel in his version of Earth 616. He was showing that there is a loop. If what you're doing doesn't break the loop remains intact. So the whole thing was returning those stones, those artifacts to exactly where they should have been in the timeline. And I know that the Ancient One had said to the Hulk, otherwise, if you're going to create a branch timeline like that. And that was something that Loki went even on a deeper dive of. And time is so important because, of course, if you understand Kang the Conqueror, he totally piggybacked off the time travel and such concept that Tony Stark had gotten, and he traveled all the way back in time to be Rama Tut because he was bored where he was in the future and said, well, I think I'll go back in time and I'll basically be King Tut and be powerful. Because when you have everything you want and you have all the money in the world, as the saying goes, what's left? Power. So the concept of power and Kang being the biggest big bad, like way better and stronger than Thanos. And then the whole time travel thing, you have to understand branch timelines and closed loops versus, going off and creating new branch timelines. I think that, but for the threat that Kamala would pose to Kang, they would not be pruning that timeline because it did not kind of like birth Loki type chaos, and it was not a threat to the TVA and or to Kang, right? So he who remains or Immortus wouldn't care, and Kang wouldn't care. Not every last thing is going to be something that they're going to care to trim. So if Kamala's just closing that loop so that her own family lives and it's not going to threaten Kang, that's one thing. But I wonder what's going to happen in Loki 2, right? Because that season they've been filming for. I'm wondering if we don't start to see Easter eggs where it's like Kang slowly becomes aware of the fact that somewhere out there is somebody who, with that bangle and with their powers, can match him. Especially if they're around Captain Marvel in binary form and if they're with Photon, Spectra, and Monica Rambeau. That's going to be an unholy trinity that can threaten him. So I do think it's both. So then at the end, we have reflections about Muneeba being really strict with Kamala, explaining why she was so strict, because she's not ready to let her go yet. Sana kind of wonders if she didn't hold Muneeba close enough when she was Kamala's age, or tightly enough. And Muneeba reassures her that actually she was fine. You know, she loves her mother. She didn't have a problem otherwise with how she was raised. She just acknowledges finally, I couldn't see what you needed to show me. So now it's like, you know, those two characters, their rift has been healed. They apologize to one another, but Sana's like, that's fine. You know what? You leaving me and going to America and everyone coming back. She basically sums it up by saying, perhaps this was the journey I was intended to take, one that will bring me back to you. And everyone hugs. So I wonder if she's going to leave Pakistan to go live with the Khan family in Jersey City, New Jersey, because Kamala's mom, Muneeba, had opened that loop in the last episode and said, I think given your infirm, you know, given your condition, maybe you need to come and live with us. It's time you start considering doing that. So, of course, we can't leave this episode without opening up another loop and keeping us all invested to get into the final episode of this series. So at the next scene, we're at the Circle Q building in Jersey City, New Jersey. It's nighttime. Bruno goes out to lock up, to throw out the garbage in the dumpster, and then, you know, go upstairs into his apartment. And he's confronted by Kamran, who, of course, calls him Brian. That has been a running thing throughout all the episodes. Well, really from episode 2 onward. And Bruno's a little shocked and is like, what are you doing here? And Kamran explains that he needs help. So then we end up being in Bruno's apartment, in his actual room. I got to look into these Easter eggs more. If you guys know what they mean live or on the replay, let me know. But as I'm here finishing up my live reaction, and identifying what Easter eggs and loops I have so far, there's 2 things that are hanging up behind on the wall behind Kamran, and he specifically acknowledges them. So again, these are Chekhov's guns. They would never have. They have to have some sort of importance. They have to factor in, or they wouldn't have the characters mention them. Maybe they're just cool little Easter eggs off to the side. But once the characters start interacting with this stuff, they definitely mean something. So he sees AR, which is the symbol, I suppose, for argon. I forget high school chemistry since I only was in high school 5,000 years ago. So I'll have to refresh on argon and what it could mean. Kamran says it's one of his favorite elements. And then he looks at the poster of Nikola Tesla. I'm going to look into that story. I know the story, but I'm like, how does that really factor in? And he's like, oh, you're a science guy? And Bruno laughs, and he's like, it's a wonder we never hung out before. You know, kind of tongue-in-cheek. But Kamran's like, can we just restart? Because this is really weird. They're showing Kamran out to still be a protagonist, a likable character. He cares. He's not sour. You know, because his family abandoned him. He says, can we just restart? Because this is really weird. It's nice to meet you. I'm Kamran. He puts out his hand to kind of symbolically shake hands with Bruno. They physically shake hands. You can see that Bruno's one hand is still bandaged up, so he's got to give him the other hand. So Bruno's already weak from the previous Jinn attack. What happens with him in episode 6, you know he's not firing on all cylinders. And then Bruno says, I'm Bruno. And basically that's when Kamran realizes he's been using the wrong name. Now you would say, okay, how cute, what a cute little joke. But I think this is kind of like a poker's tell or good storytelling, showing you that at this point, Kamran seems genuinely embarrassed. He cares that he's been giving Bruno the wrong name and been calling him Brian. He really is like falling all over himself. He's apologizing. He seems very truthful about this. So from a storytelling perspective, they're doing that not to waste screen time, but to show you he still is a good character at this point. He's not an enemy like, ha ha, that's not happening right now. I don't know what's going to happen in episode 6 or the end of episode 6. They could open up a loop where Kamran's suddenly pissed, or his mother somehow reaches to him and says, hey, you have to help us all completely cross over into the Noor dimension. Maybe we're stuck. We've shed our physical bodies. Help us finish, right? Because remember, she said Kamala could do it because she had the DNA and the bangle. So maybe they're going to tell Kamran to get the bangle, put it on himself, and somehow help them finish crossing over. And maybe somehow he can join them. So that's a loop that's still open. But as of right now, what the screenwriters are trying to show you is that he is genuinely still the good guy that you thought he was. It doesn't mean he's going to last like that. But for now, he's a good guy. And I think it's important because of what happens at the end. And we don't want to kill poor Bruno off, at least right now. So Bruno's like, don't worry about it. Like, we should be fine here for the night. We'll have to figure out what to do with you tomorrow because he's already been caught up. And Kamran's like, no, I have to stay with you. I have to know, I have to stay here so my mom knows how to find me. Now, I don't know if that's because he's being stubborn and it's like, my mom didn't really leave me. She was just mad. They'll come and pick me up. And if I'm roaming all over the place, it's going to make it harder for them to locate me. It could be that. It could be this sense of denial, or when the power came to him, maybe he's not a bad guy. Maybe she's not twisting him yet, but is like, we're out there. We're going to come get you. And maybe that's all he knows. So maybe he's not totally in denial. He's not in denial at all. Maybe she reached out to him like telepathically and it was like, we're coming for you. Because she can do that now because they've dropped their corporeal forms. So Bruno's like not getting that. He's like, she left you behind to fend for yourself. What makes you think she's coming back? And Kamran is not pissed. He's just explaining she wouldn't leave me behind like some kind of orphan. You don't get it. And then he flops down to sit down. And Bruno's just like thinking he's in denial and is like, my parents aren't coming back for me. And, Kamran's like, I'm sorry. That is more comic book accurate. His dad was never in the picture. His mom had issues, I think, with substances. And the grandmother had to, extinguish her maternal rights and take over Bruno. Bruno actually in the comics has a younger brother. But here so far, Bruno seems to be alone. And he says that the grandmother is like out of town. So that's okay. We can stay. And she made a lot of food. So we'll be fine. And we'll figure it out. So Kamran really doesn't get a chance to explain anything to him further. I don't think he's in denial. He could be, but I don't think so. And then as Kamran's listening to Bruno talk about like just logistics for the next couple of days, he's staring out the window, but then he sees the Department of Damage Control drone that we've seen before in episode 2. Starting in episode 2, we see all those drones. And we see the drone's perspective. The screen is red. It's got Kamran in its crosshairs, and it says target located. So instinctively, Kamran shoots out his hand, the one that was glowing before, I think the very same one. It's definitely glowing now. And he shoots the drone down out of the sky. And his hand seems watery blue like his body was in the comic book saga, even though he has a very different origin story here, it seems. But it's still definitely a nod to his Inhuman comic book roots. And he tells Bruno to get down, and there's this fiery explosion. You don't know, as episode 5 ends, is there an explosion because of something Kamran does? You don't know if it's because the Department of Damage Control is attacking the building, especially with the one drone being shot down. Maybe there's more drones and they're shooting. All you do know is you see very quickly that Bruno does get successfully like down to the floor, but we don't know what happens after that. I think it's important that they, from a storytelling perspective, even at this point, are showing you that Kamran is still, at least for now, still a legitimately good guy. Because it's him that keeps Bruno from getting, like, destroyed in the shootout. So he'll probably get Bruno out of there safely. But again, I don't know if he ends up flipping once his mother's like, oh no, you have to do this to help us, and you need to get that bangle off Kamala to complete the circuit. However you manage to do that. So Anthony Starr says, do you think there is a need for season 2 of Miss Marvel? Poor Kamran doesn't know his mom bit the dust. The drone fired something in the shop. Okay, so yeah. The drone definitely, and I don't think the drone traveled alone. Maybe it did, but the shop definitely was like, I think the mom's physical human form that they took on to like make do on Earth died, but I still think like her magical Jinn spirit survived and might have crossed over into the veil, and they're like in this sense of purgatory right now. They're definitely going to need Kamran to do. I don't think Kamran's story arc is so simple that now he's just a good guy and he's going to hang out with Kamala and Bruno forever. I think that's going to still be an open loop. I think he said they need to come find me. You don't understand for a reason. So will that be something that goes down in episode 6? Probably. I think the Department of Damage Control are still also another bad guy in the series. They're going to continue to be. There's definitely theories that Agent Cleary is a Skrull. We know we're going to get into the Kree Skrull War. We know that there's going to be Secret Invasion, which is kind of an offshoot of like different sects of Skrulls and who just thinks they should coexist peacefully on this Earth and around the Earth, and we're just all friends and we'll coexist in a silent symbiotic relationship versus, we're Skrulls, we should just take over the Earth. So that's going to kind of get us into like Secret Invasion. And I mean, could Kamala end up in there with Captain Marvel? Possibly. I don't think that Secret Invasion is going to be something that totally Nick Fury is just going to somehow single-handedly take care of with S.H.I.E.L.D. or at this point S.W.O.R.D. I do think, so there's a lot of discussion, as Anthony Starr justifiably brings up, there's a lot of discussion as to whether or not there will be a Miss Marvel season 2. And there's a lot of stuff being telegraphed directly by folks like directors that had been involved with the project before. The directors who directed episode 1 are the ones that directed episode 6. So all the other directors are done in the middle. So we're going to come full circle with the original directors from episode 1. So if you really liked how episode 1 was handled, you should be happy with the finale. I'll say that, how it was directed and produced. Do I think there's going to be a Miss Marvel season 2? I think that what they keep telegraphing is the truth. I think they're saying we need to wait. We need to see how well season 1 was received. Loki, we knew that we were going to get multiple seasons from the start. They did say that. Interestingly enough, when you had Falcon and the Winter Soldier, what were they saying? They were saying there was a little bit of coy cat and mouse going on, but then they ended up saying, this is the only season of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But then it turns out, of course, Falcon, takes on officially the mantle of Captain America. So I believe there's going to be, I know there's going to be Captain America 4. They already said that. But I think that they have left the door open for Captain America and the Winter Soldier as a second season, but kind of not. Here, I think they're open to it from what you can hear. They want to make sure that this does well. Do I think there's enough material for it? Oh my God, yes. I do, because even if they somehow wrap up Kamran neatly in a bow and he goes off and he no longer factors into anything, which I doubt will happen, and even if Bruno goes off to Caltech and he's on another coast and Kamala's on the East Coast and he's on the West Coast, I think there's so much storytelling to be done with Kamala's family. Does her brother, end up having powers too? What, didn't he dance around with some Inhuman stuff in the first, in the comic book saga? Do I think that they could bring up other baddies of hers, like the Inventor? Do I think, Legacy does Kamran get involved in Legacy? Who might be out there? There are definitely storytelling possibilities. Does Red Dagger assume an identity to get around the U.S. open warrants that he refers to at the end of this episode to become a foreign exchange student? Does Nani end up saying, you know what, I will leave Pakistan to go live with the family. I am infirm and I'm much, much older. Maybe I just need to be with my family. And he comes with her and she makes like he's a relative when he's not. There's so many different things you could do. I don't know how long they're going to have the Department of Damage Control be around actively. Is that something that gets clobbered or shut down after Secret Invasion? I don't think so. I think that's going to be around for a while. I think Sword's going to be around for a while. So I do think these different government branch entities are going to play in. And are they going to continue to clash with Kamala? Are they going to continue to clash with Kamran? I think there's definitely storytelling opportunities for episode 2. I think that's a great question. And I think they definitely will greenlight it once they're done. I know that, especially now that they're not, I think it was a big mistake to drop 2 Disney Plus series the same day of the week, and basically the same time. I think that's nuts. I think that's a mistake that they won't duplicate again. So we shouldn't see something like another Obi-Wan being dropped at the same time that there's another, like when they drop She-Hulk, they better just leave that as the only thing they're premiering. Gosh, unless they plan on taking like a ton more projects on simultaneously over the course of the next year, they can stagger these things out. Because I do think that Obi-Wan and Miss Marvel kind of stole from one another in terms of initial viewing audience. The good news is people are clearly, by the views, by the activity happening on the streaming platform, they can track. Miss Marvel's definitely gaining traction again. Well, of course, because now everybody who prioritized Obi-Wan can go circle back and catch up with her. So I hope they don't do that again. That was dumb. But, hey, what? Isn't this like the first time that you have the something like the MCU trying to do stuff parallel, feeding back and forth to each other with Disney Plus? Or a streaming platform versus the movies, both of them, coexisting with one another. So there were bound to be mistakes. That doesn't really concern me. I don't think they'll repeat that mistake and release 2 properties at the same time in the same day going forward. Okay, so that wraps everything up from my review and the Easter eggs that I saw so far. This is only my first pass reaction to the episode. Like I told you guys, there's a couple of things I'm going to research because, again, like Chekhov's gun, they're not going to open the loop on these references and not close them probably before the end of episode 6, minus, of course, whatever takes Kamala off with Captain Marvel. All right. Thank you, says Anthony Starr. You have a lot of knowledge. Take care. Thank you. And thank you for always thumbs up and commenting. The algorithm, the AI or the artificial intelligence that rules this platform has multiple algorithms out there. So every time anybody on anybody's stuff does a thumbs up, you comment, you share it, you watch it all the way through, you watch it again. Like any one of those things sends signals to the algorithm to continue to push out a piece of content long after it's been published. Not to jinx myself, but everything since I launched about a month ago continues to lift. So I really appreciate that. Rami says, that was fun. Take care. You too. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you guys give this a big thumbs up. Make sure that you share this with all your Marvel loving friends. And if you have any video themes or video ideas for me, you let me know. I've got plenty of them, but I'm more about serving my community first. I got plenty of time after that to come up with my own stuff. So I know that Second Street Marvel, who had to go, definitely gave me an idea, and I'm going to do that and give Second Street Marvel a shout out and credit in that next video. So, all right, I'm going to talk to you guys later because I'm hungry and I want to eat breakfast. So, bye.